Welcome to the Rur Valley in West Germany, where 25 years ago, the Duisburg Nord Landscape Park, or Landscape Park, was created. It is an astonishing reconciliation between nature and industry. For over a century, the steel industry left its mark on the landscape of the Ruhr, and as a result, it is dotted with chimneys. In the suburb of Duisburg, one giant steel factory is still standing. It is hardly the most obvious location for a park, and yet, at the foot of this blast furnace, on wasteland surrounded by motorways, stands one of the most surprising developments of the end of the 20th century. Spread over 230 hectares, railway lines, rusty machinery, and an entanglement of pipes form a vast landscape, which we are about to explore with the members of our German Green Team. Ralf Winkels, the park's director, Axel Förl, an expert in industrial heritage, Peter Kehl, a botanist, Kirsten Walter, a garden historian, Egbert Bodman, the park's technical director, Peter Latz, its landscape architect, and his wife Annalisa. The revolutionary concept of this park was developed in the 1990s by landscape architect Peter Latz. With the rehabilitation of this place, he became a big name in the world of landscape architecture, and his development has served as an example across continents. Today, this park is seen as a benchmark for the recycling of post-industrial sites.
The era was marked by an attempt to integrate ecological principles into society, especially through recycling. That meant we were asking ourselves, what is sustainable? What can we take with us for the next 100 years? We started by trying to organize everything, but we soon had to acknowledge that that was counterproductive. It's pointless trying to create order out of chaos. You just need to make it comprehensible and accessible to the public. We didn't draw up any plans for the overall site to begin with. That would have been an affront. And this plan that we drew up latterly is just as chaotic as the reality or the place.
Peter Latz was fascinated by the extraordinary architecture of the site. Making sense of it was key to developing his project. Over a century of steelmaking had produced this improbable landscape. The impact is as powerful as the factory once was. Its rusty ruins now symbolizing the decline of heavy industry. Axel Förl is a former UNESCO expert specializing in industrial heritage. He was involved in the surprising transformation of the region. We find him on the blast furnace, which has been turned into an observation platform, without doubt the craziest to have ever existed.
Our idea was that this should remain a place where you could see how steel production, once so typical of the Rur Valley, functioned back in the day. And this site was very complete. We were asked, is this a monument? That was in 1988. And we replied that it was. The whole of the Meiderich smelting works is a monument. We felt that this site was so spectacular that you had to be able to climb on it. Everyone should be able to climb on it. but we had a real battle on our hands. We were told, no, that's not possible. It's too dangerous. Today, you can climb on it 24/7, all year round. In 1900, Germany was producing more steel than anywhere in Europe. The capacity was huge, so we needed these massive plants, and they all needed to be interlinked so that water and gas could be transported from one to the other. You see these enormous pipes crisscrossing the landscape of the Rur Valley. That's very typical of the heavy industry of the era.
Peter Latz invented a new aesthetic without destroying these huge industrial buildings. On the contrary, he integrated them and reinterpreted them, applying a logic of recycling. In these former coal bunkers, a concrete saw was needed to cut passageways through the walls, which are 2 to 3 meters thick. Today, tunnels and walkways link the various parts of this labyrinthine whole and provide access to gardens blessed with microclimates.
We're surrounded by hoppers, which were vast containers used to store the iron ore and coal used for production. All this was built in 1927. Here we can see the tunnel where the trucks were loaded up. The engineers wanted to carry on using gravity to load up the materials. So there is still one platform situated 8 to 12 meters above ground level, whilst the other one is lower down.
Dr. Kirsten Walter is a garden historian. In her research, she has made the link between this ultra-contemporary park and 18th century English gardens.
My thesis was on English-style gardens and the theory of the picturesque. It was always Peter Latz's intention for parallels to be drawn between this new park and historic gardens. In an English-style garden, the ruins are artificial. They are built to be noticed, all with the aim of creating a certain atmosphere, of recalling the architecture of the past and the history of mankind. But here, the ruins are real. I'd say this park was a landmark in the history of landscape architecture. It paved the way for other parks. The Highline Park in New York would never have seen the light of day without the Duisburg Nord Landscape Park. It was here that new approaches were tested and developed. My favourite area is the gardens planted in the sinter bunkers. I like the smaller dimensions, which are more in keeping with those of a domestic garden. I like that these are tranquil places where you can get away from the hustle and bustle and spend time alone.
These 12-metre-high containers were filled with the help of a crane. They used to store lime, iron ore, coal or even ash. Some containers were filled in, and today they have gardens on their roofs. Others had doors and windows cut into them to create horticonclusi.
These gardens are like secret gardens that you can enter. They are perfect horticonclusi. Horticonclusi were Italian gardens from the Renaissance era, which were walled so that no one could see inside them. The dimensions of these gardens are practically identical. That's why they're laid out like this. It isn't just the ground that is green. The walls are green as well. You can see green at eye level. That's the beauty of these gardens.
Das ist das Schöne an solchen Gärten.
Peter Latz shows us round the various sections of the park. He is accompanied by his wife, Annalisa, who is also a landscape architect. She has worked alongside him since the start of the project.
These old paving stones are beautiful.
Yes, these are all that remain of a freight station which was taken out of service in the 1930s. These are the original paving stones. There's nothing new about them. They've been left as they were.
The site includes a vast network of railway tracks, which is the result of 100 years of engineering. Today, the long paths through the park follow the same route as these former railway lines.
We had to find a way to integrate the railway tracks, so we had to learn to get around as a locomotive would have done. This was not the habitual way of marking out paths. So just like when you're on a bicycle, you can't suddenly turn left or right. You have to walk in a wide arc to change direction. And that is what makes the park seem bigger than it really is. You can see here and there that it is never ending. It is a totally straight line, 3 kilometers long. It is one of the most important orientation lines on the site, because it crosses the whole park and is used daily by cyclists. And here on the other side, we have the railway track, which was used to bring materials in and out of the factory.
Growing here are what we call pioneer plants. They were the first to grow when nothing else had survived. Many of the seeds arrived like stowaways on freight trains carrying iron ore, or else they escaped from nearby allotments. In the 1980s, studies listed about 300 species, some of them exotic, such as buddleia, which is an Asian shrub and the plant most commonly found on railway lines. Peter Latz takes us to a part of the park which has been deliberately left untouched since 1991 as an experiment.
It's through here.
25 years later, nature has reasserted itself. Reclaiming the site, the vegetation has created a new ecosystem, a swamp that looks wild and impenetrable. When Peter Latz and his team discovered this site in 1991, lots of areas were polluted. They had a real ecological disaster to overcome.
Some of the more contaminated areas were cleaned up, and the chemical substances were deposited in former mines, where they could no longer cause any damage.
After 100 years of intensive coal mining, the mine shafts have now been filled in. A mutant vegetation has sprung up where it seemed impossible to grow anything. One of the fascinating things about this park is this strange landscape which captivates botanists.
We are in the mining area of the park. This used to be a mine. When you look at the soil here, you see that it is composed mainly of residue from mining activity. It's been transformed by human intervention. There's not a square meter of natural soil in this area. In the height of summer, these black substrates can reach a temperature of over 60 degrees. Only certain plant species can colonize this soil in this pioneer phase. This is called Viper's bugloss. It's a common ichium. It's a plant which originally came from the Mediterranean basin. It came here of its own accord. We didn't plant it. It just sprang up. And now it's colonizing other dry sites like this one. The scientific name for this is Sedum acer. It's from the stonecrop family. This plant can store water in its leaves and thus survive perfectly well in dry periods of the year. You also find lots of birches. That's due to the fact that they're pollinated by air. The seeds are scattered by the wind, so you often find birches on this type of site, where they have room to multiply. Birches are pioneer species. They grow in the forests around here on very chalky soil, so they're perfectly adapted to the site.
Look, that's fantastic.
The roses are already in bloom.
The farmers here don't spray their crops. That's why there are bees.
On the eastern edge of the park, the industrial infrastructures are replaced by organic farmland. The idea was to take walkers across an agricultural landscape.
Here you can see where the natural vegetation of the industrial site ends and the crops begin. The farmland is divided into fields. This farm has always been here. It is called Ingenhamshof. Today it is used for social purposes.
A park without water isn't a park. From the Renaissance to the Age of Enlightenment, each period has experimented with water in its gardens. However, in Duisburg, there was no clean water. The Emscher River, which crossed the site, received wastewater for over a century and had essentially become an open-air sewer.
At first it was a real headache getting water. We couldn't find a single drop of clean water on the whole 230-hectare site. We absolutely had to find water.
One idea was to collect rainwater on the roofs of the buildings to feed the river. The water that circulates around the park has reclaimed certain disused installations, such as these cooling tanks. Badly polluted with arsenic, they have now been washed, and today they are filled with clear water.
Here, everything is 100% clean. The diameter of that windmill is 16 meters. It is very powerful and turns an Archimedes screw, which takes the water up to a higher level. From there, with the help of gravity, it is transported around the park. Then finally the water flows back into the canal, enriched with oxygen.
One man who has his work cut out in the park is Egbert Bodman. He is the technical director. He oversees the upkeep of the site.
In these blast furnaces, there is always repair work to be done. Rust is a feature of the park, but with that comes the obvious drawback that you have to keep checking that the structures meet health and safety regulations. The rust attacks these structures. This is furnace number 1, and behind us you can see the reinforcement work done to the furnace, where pig iron was extracted. Today, this structure has been given an entirely different use. Over there, you can see seats being set up for a religious ceremony for Whit Sunday.
Eine Gottesdienstveranstaltung, die jetzt über Pfingsten hier stattfindet.
What makes this park so unusual is its biodiversity. That's quite significant. We have numerous rare plant species, which are listed as being threatened with extinction. It is important to protect them by putting in place a specific system of management. What you see here is defoliation damage caused by box tree moths. They are a species of moth which make their cocoons in this garden. The caterpillars are responsible for this defoliation, which leads to the death of the plant. We are going to have to dig up the whole pot and replant it.
In the park, the emphasis is placed on sport, leisure and relaxation, and young people see the site as a giant playground. On this playground, the gasometer hasn't contained gas since 1996. Considerable work was done to it, and it was cleaned out to get rid of any rust and residue. It is 45 metres wide and 13 metres deep, and has become the largest indoor diving pool in Europe.
At first, the park wasn't well received, especially in the Rur Valley. It had a bad reputation. It's taken time for people to come around to the idea. We had a mammoth task on our hands. But we got there in the end. These past few days, we've had to repair and rebuild this windmill. Now, all this needs to be fixed so that the rotor can turn in the wind again. This structure has become an important landmark at the park because you can see it from miles around. The windmill is also the subject of hundreds of thousands of photographs taken here.
We are now taken to a place that has remained hidden in the undergrowth for many years. The locals use the pipes that surrounded this space to create the contours of this garden, showing how integrated the surrounding factories have been with the gardens.
People call this plant jasmine because it is so fragrant, but it is not jasmine. It is a Philadelphus. That proved to us that there had been a garden here. What we wanted to do here was something quite different. We wanted to bring together a collection of substratas, earth and other materials present on the site, to test them and see how they interacted with the vegetation.
Die zu testen und zu sehen, wie sie mit der Vegetation zusammen agieren.
As you can see, the ferns are growing very well. That means that the soil is quite acidic. We didn't say to ourselves, we're going to create something extraordinary. We said to ourselves, we're going to create something very simple. When you have enough that is ordinary, achieving the extraordinary is only a matter of time. If you start by designing something extraordinary, you are already at the end. You can't add to it.